I keep saying to friends, to myself, even to people on the internet who I keep responding to, I'm gonna stop. Today's the day. I can't help myself. I just keep doing it. So, I've resigned myself to just admitting that I'm gonna keep doing it because people can't help but be stupid in my presence. And I can't let that happen. Well, I can't stop it from happening, but I'm not going to let it happen without, at least me saying something about it. So, in this case, I think it's about time that I properly addressed the differences between an enhanced port, a remaster, and a remake. And I'm going to give examples of each and kind of properly define the terms, since, to my knowledge, nobody's really, gone and properly made this definition. And they just kind of keep using the terms wrong, and I kind of can't fucking stand it. So, let's start off with, an enhanced port, what Dark Forces Remaster actually is. An enhanced port is, you add a little bit of fidelity to the graphics. You upscale them. You add a little bit there. In the case of Dark Forces Remaster, this is, making the cutscene images where General Mach effectively just changes from one image of his mouth open to a different image of his mouth open and kind of cycles between them to make it look like he's talking. That's effectively, all you do. You don't make big sweeping changes to any kind of model or image in the game. You don't change it or overhaul it in any way. You just upscale it. Maybe you add a little bit of controller support for different things, and you might work with some audio files to touch them up and make them a little better, a little crisper, a little punchier. But effectively, that's all you do. That's what Night Dive has been doing, and there's nothing wrong with that, so long as you don't overprice your game and call it a remaster. At least that's my opinion on the matter, but apparently a bunch of Night Dive simps can't handle that. Now, that said, what is a remaster? Well, unlike the music industry, which is where the term comes from, a remaster for games should be a little bit more. You should have some, controller support. You should have some audio retouching. But the models and basic gameplay should be closer to what would be expected of a game coming out now, rather than trying to be faithful to the original. Now, you are trying to stay faithful still. You're not changing the, core of the game. The story and everything should be relatively exactly the same. You shouldn't be cutting, you shouldn't be adding. All you should be doing is making it effectively the best version of the game as if it was released today. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, complete and total rework of every single thing in the game. Maybe you need to, but it shouldn't. A good example of this is the Tomb Raider remake. Tomb Raider Remaster. Also, Spyro Reignited, the Crash Insane Trilogy. Very good examples, and they're all relatively recent and very popular. Those fully did exactly as I've described. They added controller support. They did some extreme reworking of the graphics and the mechanics of the game so that it functions a little bit better. And they optimized all the products so that they all are modernized. And that's the key word there. A remaster should modernize the game. It should bring it to modern day standards for a release. That doesn't mean you change anything, but it should be, up to snuff with what else is existing today. Staying faithful, but also not changing. You gotta pick the balance there. Now, that leads into the most intensive, being the proper full remake. Now, that's stuff like the Resident Evil remakes that have come out from Capcom. That's, your Final Fantasy VII remake. Full overhaul. That means changing the gameplay, changing the story, changing everything, all of it from the ground up. That probably even means getting new voice acting done. That means getting new, images and fully, changing everything. But, it might also mean that the story's, not exactly the same, but it's treading effectively the same path. That'd be like, for example, the Grimm's fairy tales to Disney, which is a bad example, but it's effectively saying that Disney doesn't, do anything original. Had to take a cheap jab there. It was a little too easy. Anyway, that's the main differences. Boiled down to its simplest, an enhanced port should make almost zero changes aside from some light graphics retouching and a little bit of controller support, maybe some audio retouching. A remaster should fully modernize the product, bring it up to modern standard. A remake should fully recreate the game and make it entirely its own product. Two are very faithful, and one is an entirely new product. And I think that's a distinction that needs to be made because I can find a reason to justify the pricing on two of those being higher, but I can't do it for an enhanced port. A remake and a remaster require substantial work, whereas an enhanced port, anybody with sufficient time can do an enhanced port of a game. And my proof is in the pudding here. Modders have done this stuff for years. And in that, they never call it a remaster. They never use that term. But modders have done it for years, and when they do it, they're just enhancing the game. They're not remastering anything. Well, maybe they're remastering the audio, but that's a music industry term that the gaming industry really should not have taken, because it doesn't mean what they're calling it anymore. And that muddying of the water is kind of the biggest issue. So I hope that, kind of explains a little bit better what I'm talking about when I say Dark Forces Remaster is a bad fucking game. Because it's a bad fucking game. It should not be called a remaster, and I fucking hate it. And if anybody has a problem with that, fuck you.